for joining me on 21st Century Native Leaders. My name is Peter Desert III, and I am here today with Noreen Kelly. Noreen, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so first of all, talk with me a little bit about yourself.
Shay, hi, Noreen Kelly in Asia. tódích'íi'nii in Islam, but Táchii'nií, Haltsooí da Shay. Sasakach, I have master holia, church rock, Navajo constico, Are Nasha, Akonshid is Chido, Akonia, Kade Akonshalan.
So talk with me a little bit about the position you're running for. Who approached you to run for the position that you're running for? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay, we lobbied for the last 3 years at the state, New Mexico state capitol, and there was health concerns, affordable health care, and then also reproductive justice. We lobbied our representatives, our senates from this area for 2 years in the health affordability, health care, Medicaid buy-in, auto vote I call that was a big disappointment. Auto last year, not 2019 legislative session, I did reproductive justice House Bill 51. We went to the Round House to lobby for that and our legislators. And when it came to be passed, people voted against it. And Mr. Munoz, George Munoz is our senator, current senator right now. He was absent, so only the other Native community senators, they voted for us. But 2 senators, McKinley and Sibila, they didn't. Well, one was absent; the other one voted against us. So that was a very disappointing trip there. And Otto, we talked about the insurance taxes that were paid by medical insurance that was paid to New Mexico this past year, 2019, and that came up, House Bill 278, and we wanted that money, $125 million, to stay here in New Mexico, but they just kept pushing it forward, and it didn't come to the Senate to hear it. The time ran out. They were dragging their feet, and that's very disappointing because look what's going on right now. We could have used that money in a lot of ways. It just slipped through our hands, and we allowed them to. If I'm not mistaken, that money would have been recurring had we passed it. Had it been passed, it would have been recurring, but that didn't happen. To aid all as natives from this area, and because Mr. Munoz has been in there for quite a while, and I have yet to be satisfied with some of his actions there. I do oil and gas, but not so tódích'íi'nii. They push that forward. The real residents of McKinley County, San Juan, Cibola, our representation is not being taken seriously. So I see yo binanisho nishida ebonina. So our county, McKinley County, is 79.2%, almost 80%, is Native Americans. The nation, the Aro Zuni Nation, AIC, were the population of that area. And a lot of things like now, our children have to struggle with finding hotspots, internet services. Right now, they're they're having to deal with just hard copy homework that the school has to print those for them and then give them out. And that shouldn't be happening. We should be able to do online classes without having to struggle. Those are some of the things that are priority to us, but for our elected officials, as far as we look at it, as a few of us that are actually pushing for these types of issues that we feel that it should be a priority. Or even and I, tódích'íi'nii. I'm going to run for this position because our Native communities need someone like all of us. We live on the same streets, and there are a lot of miles on Navajo that are dirt roads, unmaintained. Now there's no water, there's no electricity. Certain areas we live like we did more than 50 years ago. It's still the same. And there's no food on Navajo. We're a food desert. We have a lot of gas stations on our nation, but they do not provide food. They sell us junk food like candies, sports drinks, sodas, chips. That's all that lines the counters. And if they felt confident in what they can sell those good food, but they're not making those attempts.
That's so true. I think that's one thing that was important about the junk food tax that was passed a couple of years ago was to prevent our people from buying junk food and eating junk food. So I like that position that you
Yes.
take on that. So just to expand on, I saw on your page that one of your areas that you're looking at is environmental justice. So in the news, you're hearing a lot of reporters saying that there's going to be a $3 billion shortfall for the budget for the state of New Mexico because of the oil prices. So how do you plan to make up that income loss if we do back off of producing oil in tapping into those natural resources? How do you have a balanced plan to meet that budgetary shortfall?
I believe that I was not aware of that not for long, but it's imminent that that type of comfort is not long lived. We know that oil and gas either runs out or the prices fall, and which right now is the falling of the prices. And as lawmakers, as legislators, I believe as a common person out here is that as a lawmaker, those are the things that are priority on your list. How are we gonna? It's just like you're looking at a loaf of bread. You know that when you're halfway done in the loaf of bread, you're gonna have to buy a new one, and all you have is $1 in your bag, in your purse. How are you going to make sure that you get that loaf of bread? it's the same thing regardless of how much it costs or what the dollar sign is. Those are the things that we need to hold our lawmakers, our legislators accountable. And yes, we enjoy the money. I can say that. But also to think that we need to be able to tap into a clean energy where we can use that. And I just learned that a lot of natural gas is just going to waste. It's leaking everywhere, even on Navajo. And there's a need for that, even though it's not the kind of energy that we should be using. We should be using clean energy, but while it's available, we need to make sure that none of that goes to waste.
Yeah, that's so true. I like that. I like the way you talked about that. So, talk with me a little bit about your path to leadership. How did you how did you get to that point? Because I noticed you're a board member as well. Have you always been active in your community for people to come up and approach you to take the roles and the positions that you have?
I going back to the Healthy Donation Act and the junk food tax. Back in 2013, I became one of the leaders that put that forth legislation. We approached our tribal council one by one to advocate for that, how important it was for us. At the time, 25% of the Navajo Nation was obese. So we keep going. In 2024, 25, we're going to be 50% of our nation's going to be diabetic or pre-diabetic. That was our reason for approaching them, and we worked with them, and sometimes they did not want to listen to us. We had a very big contest with Coca-Cola, and they would bring all the goodies, sodas, chips, cakes, to our lawmakers in Window Rock, and they would serve it right in front of us. And here we were sitting with our blue mush, ado, chichin, and infused water for our uh, council delegates. But as we keep approaching them, letting them know that we were serious, even though they didn't act on it, but we kept going back, and eventually, back in 2014, we had that passed. And I was one of the first people out of the 75 that worked. And I'm not sure if you know Gloria and Begay, and we worked side by side to get our council delegates to vote for it. And we eventually got that passed. And now it's law, and it's coming up. It's a sunset clause, so we need to start working on that as well. And then in our community, in Church Rock, we have uranium mines and a cleanup. We've advocated for cleanup. The Superfund, was it Superfund that came through? We wanted the whole Arroyo all the way down into Arizona to be cleaned up, but they only concentrated on the point where the spill came from. So they're working on that at least right now. And when they approached us and they said, "You don't have any uranium in your area," I said, "I'm sure we don't, because for me, the way I think about it, it's lateral, the way it seeps into the ground, and it's not going to be right there. A lot of wind in this area would carry whatever was the residue there, but it eventually uh, seeped into the ground, and someday we'll know that that uranium was still there and it's flourishing in our waters." So, and then we had that hydro resources come into town and wanting to export out of private land. And my late husband and I, Robinson Kelly, we worked side by side. He did a water is sacred video on that, and he was the person that did that. So I was behind. I never was really in the videos or anything, but I worked right alongside him, and we managed to get hydro resources out of Church Rock because there's private lands in that area that they wanted to mine on. But they had to go through Indian country to export the uranium, and he said, okay, the only way is up. So that wasn't feasible for them to do that.
That's so true. So earlier in my podcast, I interviewed a gentleman that studied uranium, and he was saying that there was over 550 abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation, and
Yes.
he was talking about the Church Rock spill over there and how water 40, 50 miles downstream, they could find small traces of uranium still in the soil.
Yes.
So I like that that's one of your points that you talk about. My Cheyenne used to be a uranium miner up in Slick Rock, Colorado, and my mom always talks about them playing in uranium tailings, and that impact.
Yes.
It's still, I guess it's still in our genes and stuff like that. So I like
Yes.
that stance that you're taking. So talk with me about the language preservation and the early childhood stance that you're taking.
Okay. We're supposed to have had our annual training at NAU in June, but that's been canceled. And we go, a lot of educators, principals who are doctors and such, and language linguists. We all meet there for a week and just hands on and how to teach and to maintain language. Nizad. Adults. So at a very young age, when they go into school, and which is for the BIE, it's FACE program, Family and Child Education. So that's where they would start, and eventually, by the time they're in the 8th grade, which they will be transitioning to high school, they should be able to read and write and comprehend what they're reading and translate it back in Navajo, or, and vice versa. If it's written in Navajo, their curriculum is going to be written in Navajo. Beniya. And right now, when we speak, we go back and forth. We jump to English because we don't have that language to describe what we're talking about. Right away we jump to English. And the young children that are in class now, they will not have that type of challenges. They will be speaking their language, writing it, and translating it back. English. They should be excelling in any language, all the languages that they will be using. And a lot of the young people, they have children that are not of Navajo descent, and they can learn that language and be trilingual. And then we advocate for accessibility to education. Like right now, we do not have the access. We don't have the internet that the child should have in their home, regardless whether they have electricity or not. There should be hotspots on Navajo. There should be that available to our students. A lot of it is we have a lot of public education in this area, and that's the state is responsible for providing that with the collaborating with the tribal government to make that available to our students. And every time we talk about education, why do our children not learning? Why are they not competing at the national level? Because we don't have the tools that we should have. Our children should have those already. And the last time, back in the 90s, we had a class in Gallup, and they had a resource room set up with all the computers, Mac and Windows, set up for all the students and then the surrounding schools. It only ran for a year, and then the second year, our students were not allowed to go there. Because I had a student at the county school, and I had one at the BIE, and they went to go on their computer there, and they were allowed. They were not allowed, and they were told no. Only kids that have a pass. My kids do have passes at the time. So all these things, we get all this money for our students, but it doesn't trickle down to the Hogans. It should be. It should be streamlined to our Hogans, and then out. And whatever's left will be going into the ones that are already set up with electricity and running water.
So how do you foresee that happening? Like, it takes money, and I see that you're a board member at Wingate School for the Wingate community out there. Where do you get the funding for that? I know there's a lot of push, and I know a lot of times JOM money or Johnson O'Malley money, people are using that, and impact aid money. How do you envision that happening? Like, I know it takes a lot of money to put that in there. In fact, I saw on someone's post yesterday saying that on Facebook, I know it's funny to say, but they say that 80% of people get most of their news from Facebook, right? They share
Yes.
stuff. But when you see that, whenever someone posted that, oh yeah, people on the Navajo Nation want all of these things. They want water, they want electricity, they want Wi-Fi, they want nice roads. But in Gallup and Farmington and most cities in the United States, they said for that to happen, they collect taxes, right? So where do you see that we can get that funding to carry that out? Do we use existing funds to preserve language? Talk to me a little bit about that.
With the Johnson O'Malley and impact aid, it applies to the public education. And impact aid is for Native students, and that's what I'm learning about. That's for Native students. But yet, how many Native students do we have in our larger cities? Albuquerque, Las Cruces. The Apache Nation is quite a few miles outside of Las Cruces. And in Albuquerque, maybe in the outlying areas closest to the city is maybe 4 or 5 Pueblos. But all of that money is targeting those 2 cities. How do we bring that out here where it's supposed to be used? Why has that not happened? Is it so untouchable that even I can't do anything about it? The Yazzie-Martinez Act is not applied. It's a law, but is our public education taking that serious? We'll find out in a few years whether it's being applied like it should be. So a lot of we all say we don't have any money, but also there are ways that I'm sure we can get those, and just lobbying for it. We need to, and right now we're learning that we're very reliant. We're all comfortable with oil and gas, and it's going away. And then we rely on big money to tell us how to vote for these issues. And that's what's getting us broke. That's going to cause our education to shortfall. We need to look at the education. We need to look at how, yes, a lot of our neighboring states have a lot of money through taxes, but also any country, any state in our country that has a lot of native lands, they are struggling, but we need to go beyond that. How is just by being there for the community, making sure that a dollar is stretched till it squeaks in Indian country. And I see that a lot of our native communities in the nation to the north here, their schools are needing attention. Are there any other ways to get that money here? Those are the things that we need to take a look at.
That's true. I like the way you talk about that, and you definitely seem like you have a lot of knowledge about these different areas, and that's one thing that's important. To if you win the A&M New Mexico Senate District 4 seat. So another area that I see on your website is food sovereignty, and I know we talked about this a little bit as far as what we see in grocery stores or convenience stores on the Navajo Nation. Talk with me about how you see food sovereignty and, I guess, using equity to, for all of our people to have a healthy diet.
We see a lot of farms. We have our own farm, Navajo tribal farm. But are we growing healthy foods there? Are we making sure it stays on the nation? Or are we exporting all the food that needs to stay here? We should be able to grow quality, healthy foods. And also with that, we can eliminate a lot of the junk food that's being shipped into our neighborhoods on a daily basis. When you go to the bigger cities, Flagstaff, Albuquerque, even Santa Fe, you have Whole Foods. They have quality foods. We don't have that here. And our shelves lined with salty, sugary foods, chips, and then sodas. We need to get all those foods into even the convenience stores on Navajo. A lot of these areas, that's the only source of food, the only place they can buy food. And we need to hold those convenience stores to that. They must supply good food, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. They can do it. They can sell those. People will buy them. People buy the chips and sodas because that's all there is available, and they have to have something in their stomach. Our kids, they're learning to eat those things because there's no transportation. Some areas, even Navajo, is like close to 60 miles away one way to get to Gallup to get decent food. So if they had that in Navajo, they can buy all those. And look, we're out of a lot of foods, and that hasn't hurt us in any way yet. But we need to learn from that to be able to supply those things. We do deserve it. We do deserve good food. And as the Food Sovereignty Alliance is working on, is to get farm to table in the Shiprock area, because that's where our farmers are. And then also there's some small farms that grow a lot of good food. that to make that accessible for them to sell to the local schools, to the local hospitals, to make a living off of that. And that's what's being worked on. So that needs to happen more often. And then also someday we'll get that food that is grown on Navajo to be available in the stores, in our grocery stores on the nation. All the convenience stores should be able to sell those items that the farmer down the street, not a mile away from them, to be able to bring his or her produce to the store so they can sell it to the general public. That needs to happen. We used to do that. I remember my grandmother, as a child, my grandmother would load up squash and corn to take to the local store and sell it there. We need to do that. We need to make sure that our farmers are educated on all the red tapes that they have to jump through and make sure that they excel in those areas so that we can have fresh fruits and vegetables year round. That's a continuing work that's being done right now. And someday we'll have enough food for everyone. And we'll make NAPI to provide those things, to take a look at what is needed on Navajo, not in Texas or California. We need it here.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And just so you know, about three years ago, NAPI actually grows organic produce, watermelons. Trying to think what else. Some vegetables. We have organic wheat as well that we grow there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have our sumac. We also have green chili that are in hoop houses. Green chili is usually ready a month before hatch is available. So, and I think you bring up some really good points and about about sovereignty and food sovereignty. And whenever I look at it, I think one of the things is that I think you made a good point whenever you said that my grandma used to do this, because I originally grew up in Lugajigai, and that's what we used to do too. I grew up farming, and I think that's one area that I really like to talk about sometimes is teaching our kids, because that's how our people used to be. We used to be farmers, and we raised sheep and livestock, and it seems like, I mean, this kind of parallels your language preservation stance, because the way I was taught it goes together, right?
Yes.
I have a 11-year-old daughter, and we're planting corn, and talking about it, and then we process and we sell neshjiji in the fall, and
Mm-hmm.
but teaching her about business and economics and supply and demand, but using the traditional teachings and how we learned this 50, 60 years ago. But I think there's definitely a need for that. And one thing that I talk about at my high school, at least, is about, I'm not too sure if I mentioned this, but I'm a high school principal, but using, and just so you know, we at my high school, we do take into account a lot of the equity and using those funds of knowledge, and we have speakers coming into my high school to talk about culture, to talk about our traditional teachings like weaving and basket making, and
Mm-hmm.
playing different Navajo games. But I think aside from that, I really like that stance you're taking with food sovereignty. So I do have another question off of that. So how do you stand as far as economic development? Like, is that something that you push for, or talk with me a little bit about where you stand?
I think a lot of times when we say economic development, we look at the bigger global picture of economic development where there's a lot of smoke and smog. But we need to look at what our economic development is as natives to this community. We need to make sure that we are respectful of Mother Earth so that she thrives to give us and all. Even now, what's going on now, we need to bless what's going on. This is ha'ila bando kind of yoga. We were taught those things when we were kids. Is don't just jump into anything. This is what they're talking about. And you heard about Yeitzah. This is Yeitzah because you don't see that. It's bigger than us. And we have to make sure we can overcome it. And a lot of our people are not. They want to go forward. They want the fast moving, fast paced life that they had before all of this. They want it back right away. They want to get back in there. But also we need to take a look at how we've been behaving. Everything was moving so fast. We need to slow down and really look at our earth. And that's where our economic development needs to come from. And I'm not sure any one of us knows what economic development is in Indian country. Yeah, we have oil and gas that are pumped out of our grounds. Indian nation have that. When it's gone, it's gone. We had uranium mines on our lands. It was taken, but a penny on a penny was what was paid to individuals that had those lands. So we need to learn how to develop economic development. And the most prosperous, we get food from there. We get feed from there. The farm, Nappy, provides some of that. I still feel there's a lot of export, but also we need to make sure that a lot of that money goes back into the community. We talk about education into the classrooms, not any individual, but in the classrooms to make sure that our students are excelling so that they can come back. They'll come back if we had. My son is educated. My daughter is educated. But there's nothing for them to do here. They don't have any type of work that their profession demands. So they have to be away from here. We have to make sure that our government, with the state support, we can do that. And then put people in those positions that are accountable. A few dollars in my pocket, I want more. It'll be like that because our kids depend on that. And we need to, I feel that as a native, I know what it means to be a native student. I want them to be able to say, she understands me. I can relate to a young man that says, my parents drove me 58 miles one way to get to an internet so I can get my work done. 3 times a week, that's 116 miles. And it's a good thing my dad had a good job so he could pay for the fuel. And fuel was only $3 in that area when he was talking about that. And he says, because of my parents making sure that I got my work done, I am proud to say that I have 2 master's degrees, he says, at the legislative hearing. and one of them talking about being able to get broadbands into the communities. And that's what he was talking about. If we provide that, our kids will excel and be competitive with the rest of the nation. It's not because they can't learn, it's because they don't have what needs to be at this day and age.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's that access to resources and have with using equity to look at those different things. So whenever you're looking to the future for Navajo people, how do you see it?
In the future, our kids speaking fluently in their language and being able to conduct business in that language, and then outside entities respecting our children because they're bilingual, truly bilingual, and we can earn that respect from ourselves too because we learned it, we're using it, we professed it in kindergarten. My youngest son, is able to read and write and listen and write what he hears, but he does not understand what it means, what he's writing, until he goes to his Navajo dictionary. So that's one that was the first step to becoming fluent in your language. Third part is missing, or the fourth part is missing. He says, tell me what I'm saying. He says he'll write down stuff, and then he reads it to me, and I let him know. So one time, we were at the squadrons, just busy, and grandmothers, they were talking, not very nice. He goes, I said, what do you mean? He says, Mom, this is what I heard. These are not good words. He goes, they said, tódích'íi'nii, please, shush. You don't call people that. He says, so a child could be listening to you when you talk like that. So stuff like that. So I think that we can say that we are, and it's written already, so we can use it. We need to use that. And every classroom on Navajo, we should all have that. By the time we get done with our high school, we should be able to say he's fluent in that.
Nice, I like that. So thinking about your platform with the three different areas, why should someone vote for Noreen Kelly?
I believe in our community, the Navajo Nation, as well as our neighbors to the south, Zuni. We'll listen to them. We've been treated really very unbecoming from our senator. He would not have time for us to talk to him. He always had other things to do. He was too busy, and you would see big suits coming out of his office, and you're waiting outside, and he'll be following them and say, okay, I need to get to the floor. I need to get to this meeting. So I would treat everyone equally. I would treat everyone like I would want to be treated. Even if I can't offer them what they want, I can listen to them. Because that's all we want, is people to listen to us. We want them to acknowledge that we have concerns. That's why we feel that we're from this community, and accept it and be proud of where we're coming. We need that representation.
Yep, that is so true. I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget is that, we have two ears and one mouth, and we listen to what the people are saying, and that's an important component. And if they're not making time, that's not good. We need a new
Yeah.
leader in there. So I did.
And also, I live on the same streets everybody does. Dirt road.
Yeah, that's true. So talk. I just noticed another area on your website about COVID-19. Talk with me a little bit about where you stand on what's going on. Do you have a message for people out there?
Just be very careful because the professional people knowing what they're talking about are the ones that are sending us the message. And I'm so proud of our governor for reacting that fast to letting us know what is expected of us out here. And I know that a majority of the people are really um, adhering to that because sometimes I need to go drive to Gallup to get this or that. And you see a lot of people that are at the grocery stores. They're distancing themselves. They're wearing their masks. They're wearing their gloves. And we're all staying home. And the weekend curfew, I don't know who's out there because I'm not going to go out there and find out who's out there. And also, our community people in Gallup demanded that a limitation on liquor sales because that makes people become careless. So that's one area that um, I agree with the community of Gallup for doing that, limiting the sale. And so that's one area that we're being proactive in. And then also our leaders on Navajo, Jonathan Nance, is doing really, really putting his foot down about the curfew and uh, the travel on the roads, staying home, and having all those available. But the other thing is that we also have to have the necessities like bleach and Clorox wipes. We just took it for granted until it was all gone. And paper towel was a commodity. And I bought a bottle of Lysol spray because my nephew, my nieces, they're all in healthcare. They're the front line. And my nephew was asking if I could find a Lysol spray at 8 o'clock on my way home. I would buy it, he says. So I went to the local dollar store and they had it. So I bought him one, and my brother was so happy that I was bringing my nephew a bottle. So those are high demand stuff that we're all sharing, and people are sharing their food again. Somebody may be low on potatoes, flour, and we're sharing those like we did when we were kids. People would come to us and ask for salt, sugar, flour, and we're doing that. Those types of humanity we have not lost.
That's so true. I think one of the things about your stance and how about how you view COVID-19 and the virus, I think your platform kind of ties into those different aspects of it. And I think, you look at it, not only are Native Americans being impacted by it, but African Americans and Latino. And I know you talk about on your site about it being poverty, and I think that's an important component
Hmm.
that you understand, and I think that you will take to represent. I guess if 80% of your constituents are Navajo or indigenous descent, that's an important component and important to have that voice in advocating on a state level. So I really like what you're doing, and How can people contact you? How can people support you? What type of support do you need?
We first of all, we're trying to get out. Like we're on. We have a website out, and we post things on there. And I'm not sure if it's getting out as much as we would like, but also when we first started, we were supposed to go door to door, but that's not going to happen. Maybe if we're lucky, it's only a month away anyway. So that's not going to, a lot of things will still be the same, a lot of limitations, a lot of internet type of communication, um, Facebook, maybe. I don't know how we would set that up. We're we're fundraising, and a lot of people believe in our campaign, and they're supporting us, but we still need more support. So that's where all of that. If we had the kind of money other people have for campaigning, we would be across the globe. But we have limitations there. You base and
Yeah, that's the thing about grassroots
yes.
campaigns. I actually ran one this past fall. I ran for San Juan College's board, and I ran against a Republican. I lost by 19 votes, but
Wow.
she had signs all over. But I probably walked, gosh, miles and miles, probably 60 or 70 miles, because I would walk about 4 to 5 miles a day knocking on doors.
Hmm.
But I think that's definitely that where you kind of have to use social media to reach people. And so you're also on social media. I see you're on Twitter, Facebook. I think Twitter is NK4NM. People can follow you on Twitter. And
Yes.
also, I see your website is www.peoplefornoreen.com.
Yes.
And that's one thing that's nice, grassroots efforts, there are little tiny donations that people can make. So if you see Noreen's page on any of those social media platforms, drop her $5, $10, $15. Those are the ones that go a long way.
Hmm.
And but other than that, do you have any last comments to add?
Just to the young people, that I'm here for them. I want them to excel. I want them to be the best that they can be. And with the hard work that they face every day, they travel miles in their buses, and some have to stay in the residential. And even more so right now is they're being challenged with having to stay out of their classrooms, where they felt that they were in control of things. But for now, they're finding it just as easy to do it online. And then they have their hard copy work that they have to do. But do not allow anything to slow you down. Do what you need to and do more. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for taking time for to interview and talk with me to share your platform. My podcast is heard mainly in Arizona and New Mexico. About probably of 100%, if we were to break up the pie, it'd probably be about 40% in New Mexico. So quite a few people do listen to in San Juan County and then McKinley County as well, and obviously in Gallup, Farmington, and Albuquerque as well. But there's a different generation of people that listen to podcasts because they can download an audio file and then drive to work, or while they're running. You don't have to, sometimes on Facebook you have to, if the screen goes dark, you can't listen to it anymore. So when I put it out, a lot of times people just download it and listen, and this definitely will reach a younger generation audience, and I think that's what that's how Jonathan Nez won, because all of the millennials showed up to vote for him. Even they came back from Albuquerque, the big cities, to vote. So I think that's one thing that is important. But other than that, we are all set. If you want to send me a picture, or do you want me to pull a picture off of your Facebook to put on the front of the podcast background?
Oh, AB lahato.
Okay. All right. Well, we are all done, unless you want to add anything, Tyann. I know you're on the call. Yeah, I remember you saying you're the campaign manager. You want to say a few words?
Yeah, let me introduce myself. Yate she Tyann Benali Yenshia Tova Ani Nishle Nishasha Bashichin do Kea Ani Ida Shiche do Tena Jini Ida Shanale. I am from my family roots are from the Four Corners area, and I've been up here in the Farmington area doing some work. But I am really honored to be helping Noreen with this campaign. A lot of my background for the past 16 years has been in pretty much project implementation, capacity building, working with different indigenous all across the nations. But most recently, I've been working, I've always been into politics. My undergrad is poli-sci, so I've always had a passion for, policy and indigenous rights. But 2 years ago, I stumbled upon the Anthony Allison campaign and helped out with that campaign up here. And I was reached out, did some other work. Oh, hello?
We lost you for a little bit.
Yeah, this has been happening all session. But where did you lose me at?
You talked about working for Anthony Ellison's campaign.
Oh yes, so and then working families. I did some consulting work and met them, and they basically called me up and said if I wanted to, work with Noreen Kelly. I've heard of her name, especially while I was doing work in McKinley County with uranium work out there and environmental justice, and I thought it would be a good fit. And I'm all about getting our indigenous leaders in there. And I'm really proud of what our Navajo Nation is doing, our president right now, for the COVID efforts. And I really feel like it's an important issue. Something that comes to mind is, as I saw something with the president saying that even though we are United States, we're not treated like U.S. citizens, right? And there's a lot of misrepresentation, and that doesn't sit well with me. And so I feel that, New Mexico being 23 tribal different nations, we need more representation in our legislator. And so the more we can do that, especially from those that are from the community, right, and know the community. And I feel like Noreen has a lot of that, and she brings a lot to the table, especially being, Native American elder and, having worked, on the Navajo Nation too. So a lot of it, I'm speaking from the heart right now. It's just been I feel like it's really been hard for, us Diné people, especially with the COVID right now happening. But I feel like Noreen really has that passion to, make change, make social change, make environmental justice movements and efforts, with District 4, and hopefully, bring her to Santa Fe, and then we can make change all throughout the state of New Mexico and get more indigenous representation, because, 23 nations, we do need more indigenous leaders in our office. Yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
That's awesome. I like the way your team has, you're supporting an elder, and that's a really important component, and because you can definitely, you have that aspect of what the millennial population, how they would vote, and I'm glad you're supporting Noreen and with this effort, and I wish you all luck. It's definitely gonna, it's a different type of election right now, especially when not making fried bread and making mutton stew and stuff like that. But I wish you luck, and let me know how it goes. I'll talk with my wife. Maybe we can donate some to your campaign. I'm not too sure if we can if you live in McKinley or San Juan County to McKinley County.
Well, the District 4 is a bit of, it starts in what, Two Gray Hills area?
Yes.
So it goes, if you go and see a map of the District 4 for the Senate, it goes up into San Juan. So it
Yeah.
does pretty much a bit of Cibola, majority of it's McKinley, and then San Juan.
And then a bit of Cibola. Yeah, so Audrey. It's a very low income portion. And I know if you're from Lokachakai, it's just over the mountain. Oh yeah, nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
We
right.
share one gagi.
I know. As the doggy flies. Oh, well, thank you. It was nice to meet you, and hopefully one day we can meet and talk a little bit, have some or
Oh.
or some water. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, and I'll let you.
Chin.
Chin. Oh yeah, we can
Yeah.
get some chin, or I can give you some neshtiji when it's done.
Yes. Oh,
Oh.
we used to do that. My late husband and I farmed down in Kari'ahe.
Oh, okay.
So I know how much work that is.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot
fun
of work.
too.
Yeah, it is fun whenever you're shucking
Oh
it.
yes.
Yeah, so, but I'll let you know whenever it's all ready, and then you can share to your page, and then I'll share it to my listeners. I do have about 22,000 followers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that's the reach that I have by putting information out there. And you know, the nice thing about this is that, you know, you're both of you are stakeholders for Navajo, and I wanted to hear what you were saying a little bit more about Nappy, because the farm is our farm. It's in.
Yes.
And you know, those are important components to look at, and we do have that discussion about growing produce for the Navajo Nation, more
Oh.
produce. You know, even you know, whenever that happens, you know, we do supply a lot of produce to, especially right now, you know, with the donations of the potatoes and the pinto beans back to the Navajo Nation. And you are right, a lot of the produce does go off the nation. You know, but the thing is that money does come back, and you know, that
Yes.
donation that was made, $1
Mhm.
million, you know, that went back to the Navajo Nation. And we do work quite a bit with high school and college Navajo students and bringing them back for internship
Yes.
opportunities. They
Mhm.
do about 8 per year. In fact, when I was going through high school, NAPI paid for me to go to study at University of Illinois for a summer. But they do a lot of outreach like that. We do a lot of, if you have soil that wants to be tested, we do a lot of soil testing for Native
Oh, okay.
Navajos. So that's one of the things too that we're trying to talk about more. And I missed your call on Saturday because I was in a board meeting, and it ran longer
Oh,
than I
yeah.
expected. But
Mhm.
we were talking about giving back more to the nation, and one of the things that we're looking at doing is we do have a chemistry lab or lab up at NAPI that we're going to start making some sanitizer, and we're looking to purchase more PPEs for our first responders, but to give back. And you know, that's one thing that we're taking a look at is, you know, providing back for the stakeholders, you know, that us, I guess I should say us, or the that live out on the reservation. So,
Yes.
but I like listening to what you're saying, because that I can take that back to the board, and we can have that discussion even more. But other than that, thank you, and it was good to talk with you. And nice to meet you too, Diane.
Yeah, likewise.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good evening and be safe. Don't be going
Oh,
out.
Ikeha.
Oh,
Yes,
Ikeha.
thank you.
no,
Hapona shi.
Hapona.
Shiyash.
Okay, Shama. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.